In my 2.5 years on YouTube, one of the things I'm asked for most is a beginner roadmap. You're new to the guitar and you're wondering what order you should learn everything in to get the best results and not end up quitting like 90% of other new players. So today I'm gonna tell you what order I think you should learn everything in as a beginner. Now, if I were to actually teach everything I'm gonna talk about in this video, it would be hours long. So what I want this to be is more of a resource that you can bookmark and come back to whenever you're feeling stuck and not sure what to work on next. I'll also have this all written up into a PDF guide available over on my Patreon for those of you guys who would like it. There'll be a link to that at the top of the description. So the very first thing you're gonna wanna do before you even get the guitar in your hands is set some goals. And best case scenario, you set some short-term goals and some long-term goals as well. So short-term goals would be like, I wanna learn 3 songs from this artist, right? It's something you could accomplish in a few weeks or a few months, depending on how hard the songs are. And then a long-term goal would be something like, one day I hope to be able to play in a band or maybe release my own song or something like that. And the main purpose of this is just to give you something to aim at as you are progressing. Like I said, a lot of people quit in those early stages. Having goals and being able to see your progress and where you're at is really gonna help make sure that that doesn't happen to you. Number 2 is posture and position. We wanna make sure we don't develop any bad habits and things that can maybe lead to injury down the road, right? So you wanna make sure you're sitting up nice and straight, your shoulders are back, and the biggest thing is when your guitar is sitting on your lap like this and you're sitting, make sure your guitar isn't leaning back. This is something I see with a lot of beginners is they'll lean their guitar back like this so that it's a little bit easier to see what they're doing with their strumming hand. Never ever do that. Make sure your guitar is perfectly parallel to your body like this. You will get used to it eventually. Number 3, you'll need to learn the names of all of the parts of your guitar and then also a bunch of other guitar related terms. So you need to know that this is the body of the guitar, this is the neck, these are the frets, these are the pickups, and then you'll also want to know about what chords are, what scales are, what's the difference between strumming and picking. Next up, you need to learn how to tune your guitar. Now, to be able to tune your guitar, you're gonna need a tuner, and you can find an app on your phone. There's some good tuner apps out there. You can also look one up, just search on Google if you're using a computer, but I'd highly recommend investing in a tuner if you haven't already. The best ones out there, in my opinion, are either pedal tuners, which are pretty expensive, or a clip-on tuner like this one right here. This is my favorite one. This is from TC Electronics. I've been using it for years. This one's my favorite. D'Addario also makes a really great one as well. Number 5, this is a good point to learn basic strumming technique. The one biggest piece of advice I can give you when you are learning how to strum is to stay really, really relaxed and keep a loose grip on your pick. Number 6, you're gonna need to be able to read chord charts and tabs. Now, chord charts are typically laid out with the strings vertical, and then tabs, they're gonna have the strings going horizontal. One thing I see people get a little confused with is with tabs, you're gonna have the low E string on the bottom and the high E string is gonna be up at the top. Number 7 is where I like to give guitar players a quick win by teaching them a very simple song. That song is A Horse With No Name by America, and it only uses 2 chords. The first of these chords is an E minor chord that looks like this. And I highly recommend using fingers 2 and 3 whenever you play an E minor chord, because if you use fingers 1 and 2, it actually twists your hand really weird. It makes it uncomfortable. So get in the habit of using fingers 2 and 3 for this chord. And then the other chord is this very, very weird D6 add 9. Just like that. And essentially you're just spreading those fingers apart. So you went from here to here. That's the other chord. And we're just gonna do a very basic strumming pattern where we just go all downstrokes and change. It does not have to be perfect, totally fine if it's messy. And the entire song is just those 2 chords going back and forth. Go as slow as you need to kind of get this down. And when you feel like you're ready, you can even play this along to the actual recording of that song. Number 8, it's time to learn all of your open chords. So we'll start with A major, and then we've got A minor, then we've got C major, then D major, then D minor, then we've got E major, E minor, G major, and I do recommend learning F major. It's a tough one. It's got this little bar here. but I recommend you start working on that as well. Next up, it's time to take our strumming to the next level with something called the constant strumming technique. So up until this point, you've probably thought about strumming patterns as just upstrokes and downstrokes, but you'll notice that every good guitar player, their hand actually never stops moving. And what you can do is just decide when you're gonna hit the strings and when you're gonna miss the strings and create patterns. For example, if I were to throw this chord on here and I were to just move my hand in this motion, it's the same the whole time, and I'm gonna play all downstrokes here, okay? Now, if I were to hit every upstroke at the same time, it would sound like this. I missed one there, but it would sound like this. Now, if I were to strategically miss some, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up. Look how my hand never changes, right? I just am not hitting the strings now. Again, down, down, up, down, down, up. Don't let that hand stop when you're playing these simple strumming patterns, and you're gonna notice your sense of timing gets a lot better and it will really smooth out your strumming as well. Number 10, learn essential music theory. I know this is something people really like to push off for as long as possible, but I promise it's really easy to learn. It really is, and you only have to learn a little bit of it, just the most important stuff. So that's things like the major scale, how it's made, where it comes from, because all the music that we play in Western music, it's all coming from the major scale. So then you'll also be able to learn about chords and keys and how they all kind of fit together, and basically like how music is formed. I do have a video on this called Essential Music Theory for Guitar Players. If you're interested and want to watch it, I'm going to put a link to it under referenced videos in the description under this video. Number 11, we've got finger independence. And as a guitar player, your fingers need to all move independently and kind of have a mind of their own. That's why we call it finger independence. And so I'm going to give you 2 exercises that you can start working on for this. The first one is just a basic chromatic scale. So starting on the 1st fret on the low E string, you're just going to go 1 finger, then the 2nd finger, then the 3rd, and then the 4th, and then up to the next string and do the exact same thing all the way up through the whole scale. And you can go as fast as you want. It can be slow, it's not a big deal. The other exercise is just a spider walk. There's a few different ways to do this, but we're gonna do the same thing, except we're gonna start on the A string, so the 5th string here with our 1st finger. And then for our next finger, we're gonna actually go up a string to the D string, and then up a string again with our 3rd finger, 3rd fret, 4th fret, 4th finger, and onto the B string for the last one. Then we're gonna shift everything up 1 fret. So now our 1st finger is gonna go to the 2nd fret and on the B string, and it's gonna go backwards. So we're gonna go B string, 2nd fret, 1st finger. Then we are gonna go down to the G string with our 2nd finger, up onto the 3rd fret, and then the 4th fret with our 3rd finger, 5th fret with our pinky, and that's down on the A string. And then we're gonna shift everything up and reverse it again. So we're gonna go 1st finger to the 3rd fret, but it's back on the A string, and same thing, and back down all the way up. Again, this can be as slow as you need, and you can go as far up the fretboard as you can reach. Number 12, play in every key with a capo. So the great thing about a capo, like this one, it doesn't matter what kind of capo you have, they're all great, is that you only need to know the chords in the keys of G major and C major, which are basically just all the open chords we talked about earlier in this video. And you can play in any key by just taking your capo and moving it up the fretboard and playing those open chords. Those are gonna transpose you into new keys. With this, it'll actually allow you to cover all 12 keys without having to resort to bar chords. Speaking of bar chords, number 13 is to learn your basic bar chord shapes. Now there are 4 main bar chord shapes that you're gonna use all the time, and these are gonna take you some time to learn, so you're gonna continue to work on these even as you're moving on to the next steps, because this really does come down to, as long as you're applying the right technique, it's about building strength, it's about building dexterity. It's not something that you can just figure out instantly, but the main shapes that you want to learn are the E major shape bar chord, so putting this up here on the 5th fret, and the E minor shape bar chord, so that just involves removing that 1 finger. And then the other 2 are the A major shape, putting that there, and the A minor shape. All right, number 14 is going beyond strumming patterns. So as you become a more seasoned guitar player, you actually will start thinking of strumming patterns as these patterns that are ups and downs. You'll start thinking about strumming more like from a drummer's perspective. I call this dynamic strumming, where you're essentially using the low strings, the high strings, muted strums, and all of these other tools to make your strumming just sound more interesting and dynamic. This is a good point to kind of start working on that. I actually have a video, if you're interested, on how to play like a drummer. It's using this dynamic strumming technique. It'll be linked in reference videos, but it's basically to get your strumming to go from sounding like this to kind of like Number 15 is musicality and songs. So you've got all the basic building blocks of playing guitar, right? All the foundational elements. Now it's time to put them together in a way that kind of makes you sound a little bit more musical and less mechanical. So the best way to do this, honestly, is to just work on a bunch of songs. Make sure they're songs you actually like, by the way, or it's not going to be fun for you at all. But just start learning a whole bunch of songs and really focus in on things like smoothing out your chord changes, and then also making sure your strumming is sounding nice and fluid. And the other thing is to kind of start connecting yourself to the music. So when you're listening and playing along, a lot of times what beginners will do is they'll just focus on what they're doing, and they'll kind of tune out and stop listening to everything else that's going on around them. Try and take yourself out of what you're doing, listen to the music, and listen to how what you are doing fits into the rest of the music. Next up, you'll want to learn both the major and minor pentatonic scales in at least one position. Even if you don't want to ever learn lead guitar, it's very, very helpful to take some time to learn these scales at least. They're important just for understanding music in general. So the minor pentatonic scale, because it's the easier one, looks like this. And then the major pentatonic scale looks like this. Number 17 ties into the last one, and that is to learn some basic lead guitar techniques. So this is things like obviously picking individual strings is something that you can work on, but also things like hammer-ons, pull-offs, bending, vibrato. You don't have to learn these in any advanced form, but they are things that you should start working on and developing at this point. Number 18, simple improvisation. I think a lot of people get intimidated by the topic of improvisation, but you really cannot get started on this too early. I have some great lessons that are going to help you get started on the right foot. They're super simple. You're using one basic scale shape, and it's just going to help you build a deeper connection to the instrument beyond just you're looking at something, you're reading it, and you were trying to reproduce it. This is going to make you kind of have more of a musical mind and again, build those connections. Okay, number 19 is basic fingerstyle technique. Now, I'm kind of guilty of learning fingerstyle incorrectly, and now I can't do traditional fingerstyle techniques. I have kind of my own style, but I think it's really important to learn some sort of fingerstyle technique. It doesn't really matter which one specifically, but this is going to give your playing a little bit more dynamics and give you some more options when it comes to songwriting or just playing other songs. So every once in a while, put your pick down and try playing some chords with your fingers. Okay, last but not least is learn to play by ear. This is another thing that seems out of reach for a lot of beginner players, but you can really start working on it right away. So this means with that basic knowledge of music theory, you can start applying some really simple concepts and be able to figure out something like the chords to a song completely by ear. It's a lot easier than it sounds. I do have a full course on this if you're interested. It's called Listen and Play. It'll be linked below. Start training your ear and you'll go from a person holding a guitar to a full-fledged musician. From here, I'd highly recommend you watch my lesson on the forever beginner curse and how you can break it. It's really going to help you graduate from beginner up to that intermediate level. So if you want to check it out, I'm going to put a link to it up in the middle of the screen for you now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.